Oh, yeah. It's that time to start being concerned about our industry. And this is something I'm not trying to be discouraging, I'm trying to be encouraging as much as I can. But at the same time, I'm seeing a lot of things from companies, from customers, and probably most importantly from the community members, the people that I care about most, that have me concerned about the state of things.
Welcome to the How to Thrive in IT podcast. If you are someone working in the realm of information technology and are tired of feeling stuck, overwhelmed, and generally disrespected, you are in the right place. This is real talk about the world outside of the technology itself that you may be missing. The things you need to know to stop just surviving working in IT and start thriving in IT. Today we are talking a bit more about mindset. So here is your host. After writing 2 books and currently working on his 3rd, he's got his mind set on one thing. Coffee. Lots of coffee. Coach DJ Eshelman.
First off, a little bit about myself, just a very brief thing. I've been in the IT industry for a little over 25 some odd years now. As I'm recording this, it's January 2024. I couldn't tell you the exact time I started in IT, but I can tell you the exact moment it mattered most. Y2K, that's when it got really serious for me. So I can pretty much say 25 years with absolute definity, and then there's time before that was poking around at it. So I didn't start out in information technology like so many people. I fell into it. In my case, I had a degree in psychology, and so I was trying to make it work in that field. Figured out, no, not for me. Now I psychoanalyze computers and such. That's a bad way to say it. But yeah, after making a name for myself in the Citrix and ESN space, launched Thrive IT a couple of years ago. At some point in an episode down the road, we'll get into all of that.
Before we get into that, let's take a quick moment and thank today's episode sponsor, Be a Citrix Hero. But more about that later.
There are 4 tenets when it comes to Thrive IT. I like to make frameworks. I don't know about y'all. I mean, it's an IT thing, I know, but I especially enjoy creating frameworks and things like that. So what I've done with Thrive IT was I analyzed not only the industry and the people I knew, but my own kind of successes and failures in it, and embraced my love of alliteration and came up with the 4 M's. And so you have mindset, you have methodology, you have mastery or tech mastery, and then you have mentoring. These are the 4 M's. And if you have a balance between these, wherever you are in your journey, you will move forward. And so that's what we call a success path. Maybe at some point we will get more into that and what it looks like to have a success path. Today, I want to talk a little bit about mindset, mostly because, like I said, in the time of recording this, there's a lot of people with a lot of questions, especially when it comes to my field of expertise in the end user computing and Citrix space. I've done content about this before, about don't freaking out, like just because a company's been acquired. And I have to be honest with you that because I've done that content, what I'm about to say has more weight to it, I think. And that is it's that time to start being concerned about our industry. And this is something I'm not trying to be discouraging. I'm trying to be encouraging as much as I can. But at the same time, I'm seeing a lot of things from companies, from customers, and probably most importantly from the community members, the people that I care about most, that have me concerned about the state of things. So I just want to take a minute. I know it's going to be a little bit cheesy and will also be more than a minute, but I want to encourage you. I want you to reflect back. Think about when you first started in information technology, and maybe for some of you, it's right now. But the reality is that whether you know it or not, you're on a growth path. You're on a way forward. You're experiencing things. You're growing. You are better than you were. And that needs to be celebrated. The thing is, I'm finding people not willing to celebrate. They are just always in that mindset of, oh, it's always going to be bad. I'm always going to be behind. I've literally heard some people say, I'm too old for this. I can't do this. I'm not good enough. Or some people will say, oh, I'm too young for this. I don't have the experiences you have, blah, blah, blah. The reality is that people like myself do everything we can to make it as easy as possible, to give you a shortcut as much as we can. And it's never going to be enough. And that's why mindset is an important focus of saying, you know what, it's okay to not be okay, but it's also important not to dwell there. There comes a point where we have to say, I'm not going to go all Stuart Smalley on you. I'm good enough. I'm smart enough. And gosh darn it, people like me. I'm not going to go there necessarily. But at the same time, I think when it comes to what our industry has achieved and what we've collectively done as a group of technologists and community, I'm astounded. I look back 20 years ago and everything felt like I was all alone. I felt like I was trying to figure out everything on my own. Then this magic thing called Google came out and all of a sudden realized that, hey, you know what? I'm not alone. I can do this. It's possible. That's a big piece of this, is recognizing not only your successes and failures, but also that you've grown and that we've grown as an industry, I guess you could say, or as people, as a community. There are so many different ways that we are better than we were. And whether that just is small things, like if you've learned one thing today, you're better than you were. That's just the way that works. That continuous improvement is a concept that's sometimes seen. It's called Kaizen. It's the continuous improvement. In the IT world, I will say that this is something that I've seen adopted in some of the agile methodologies. I'm not going to push it too far with that, because the honest truth is most of what I do is actually in IT services, where I personally feel that agile doesn't always work very well. In fact, it actually causes a lot of risks that I don't think should be there, or worse, or sometimes it's actually introducing elements where expectations are not being met because of the minimum viable product didn't take everything into consideration. That's agile. Hey, you know what? But as long as we're continuously improving and we're willing to do that, that is not necessarily just a process. It is a mindset. And so I do want you to be continuously improving and challenging yourself. But at the same time, you have to stop and celebrate your wins.
We'll get back to that in just a moment.
Variety brings the heat, something new every week. Get ready to click and see something awesome for you and me. Resource of the week. Oh yeah, resource of the week. What will it be this week? Get ready to take a peek.
This week's resource of the week is Ruben's EUC Bento Box. This monthly newsletter is filled with quick learnings, tips, and tricks for you to be successful. If you work in end-user computing, you owe it to yourself to check this out. Just go to thrive-it.com/bentobox. We will do our best to keep the link up to date, but a thank you to our friends at Dizion for facilitating the box. Again, go to thrive-it.com/bentobox to learn more. The EUC Bento Box, your resource of the week. Back to you, DJ.
This is something that I get caught up in all the time, of not celebrating my wins. And people will look at me like I'm crazy sometimes. They're like, DJ, you've done all this stuff. Why aren't you happy about it? Why aren't you proud? And sometimes I will just not be proud because it's not the expectation that I had. It's not the result that I wanted. And we're going to go through that again. I have another episode that I recorded on this, but I felt it was too heavy to start things with. So we're going to talk about that at some point. But the reality is that I need to learn to celebrate everything until told otherwise, basically. Until further notice, celebrate everything. It's the coffee cup slogan there. And it's important for us to do that. So for all my friends, especially those in end-user computing that are struggling with the notion of what's going to happen, am I going to have a job tomorrow? All these kind of things that come up, and scrolling through LinkedIn and seeing the responses people are having, it's hard. And hey, I'm not going to shy away from this. There's a reality that we face. I mean, it's what it is, but it doesn't have to be defeating. In other words, I'm going to get the sads because I just lost a friend named Dan Miller. Great influence on me. He was the reason that I got into a lot of the entrepreneurial type stuff that I do, as far as consulting independently, and then later on writing books, creating courses, YouTube, all these kind of things, all stem from Dan Miller. You would not be hearing my voice right now if it weren't for the encouragement and of Dan. But he always said, what does this make possible? And so I'm facing some tough things right now. I'm in my car, literally just delivering DoorDash right now. It's not just because of a need, but also just to get away from the stress of the grind, I guess, if you will, of trying to find full-time work, doing the occasional contract work, knowing it's not going to last. And these are things that are so normal, but I have to celebrate the wins and what this makes possible. So what does having a bunch of time in the car alone to myself make possible? I can record podcasts in the car. So I'm literally getting paid to create a podcast, even if there's no like sponsors or anything like that in this episode. Talk about that soon too.
Yeah, well, about that, Mr. 8 months ago DJ, I think we'll talk about that right now. We may not have a paid sponsor, but we can be our own sponsor. He doesn't talk about it as often, but his book, Be a Citrix Hero, has been a game changer for a lot of people. People have told us that the book has advice that is not only relevant regardless of what version of Citrix you are running, but that the advice has helped some people change their careers. They have been able to spend more time at home and get paid more for what they do. That is a huge win, so we encourage you to be among the thousands of people who have read and enjoyed Be a Citrix Hero. You can find your copy at citrixhero.com, available direct from us or at Amazon. Hit up citrixhero.com to get yours. But here's a hint for our podcast listeners. There are only 13 copies left that DJ will be signing. This is only available in the US, but once they are gone, we are removing the option from the website. citrixhero.com to get yours today. But wait, there's more. Make sure you consider registering for the video library at CTX Academy. That's ctx.academy. In the coming months, DJ will be working on a second edition of the book, and those subscribed at ctx.academy will be first in line with video trainings that will find their way into the second edition in 2025. Lock in your price now. The price to get access to the full ctx.academy library will be going up in 2025. We'll see you there. Let's get back to DJ.
But honestly, what does this make possible? Okay, you just find a way to make it work, and you find the wins in it, and you find a way to smile about it, and you find the lessons. You know, if it's not a success is a lesson, I guess somebody said something like that once. I don't know. Raw reality is that it's not always easy to do what we do. We have things we face. Joe from accounting doesn't get called in the middle of the night to do accounting work. We sit through a whole day at our desks, or just working from home or whenever, and then we get called in the middle of the night to respond to a situation. That's IT work. That's the reality. So if we don't learn to be positive and have a growth mindset, then we are in danger of a lot of things. And when tough times come, our responses will usually reflect that. And so I want to be encouraging and convicting to you. You have wins to celebrate. I'm trying to think of a scenario where you wouldn't have at least some win at some point. Whether you choose to acknowledge it or not is a different scenario. But the reality is we all have wins. You know, we have these things that work for us, and that whether we choose to acknowledge them or not is a different story, but you have wins. So learn to acknowledge and grow from that. And on those times where it's a little challenging, ask yourself, what does this make possible? I'm unemployed. What does that make possible? Well, I now have the opportunity to spend some time learning a new thing. I have some time to volunteer. I have some time to spend with my family. You can choose to see it that way, knowing it's not a permanent thing. We may cycle through employers, but the reality is IT work is not going anywhere. It might change form. It might adapt. You might have to learn things you didn't think you'd have to learn. But the reality is the jobs are out there and will continue to be out there. Even if you don't have one right now, you will have one. So embrace what is made possible by not having a job. If you are in a job and you're feeling miserable, think of the things you're learning. Think of the opportunities you have. You might even be at an employer where they're paying to have people train you or coach you. And by the way, if you are at one of those places, let's get in touch, because I have resources that are available for that. And it's tough for me to find those employers on my own. So if that describes your employer and you want to take advantage of that, especially if you're miserable, That's the best time. Believe it or not, when you're miserable is the best time to engage with a coach and somebody like myself, because, hey, you're tired, you're ready to make a change, right? You're ready to learn new things. You feel like you have to. Hey, that's a great environment. What that makes possible for a guy like me is to help you learn new things, adapt and overcome and grow into a better person and a better technologist in the process. That's what that makes possible. So be encouraged today. There's lots more to come, folks. I mean, we're just scratching the surface. It's not just that we have 4 M's. I have an entire methodology I want to talk about. If things go right, if I can get the right kind of sponsors, one of the things you can look forward to is my entire audiobook. The entire audiobook of Just Do This, A Simpler Way to Succeed in IT Services, coming at you in this podcast. It is something that I have a vision for, and I'm going to find a way to make it happen. Obviously, I can't do an undertaking like that without some help, some sponsorship, but having a podcast, doing all these things is what makes it possible. Make sure you get subscribed. Do not miss that opportunity to hear from me in the future. I'm not going to say things like you won't regret it, because I don't know what the future holds, but I can tell you this. I'm going to try and be there for you. I'm going to do everything I can. So continue to be blessed by the best. And we will talk to you again in the next episode. Peace.
Well, hey, my friend, thank you so much for being with me here today. Here are your Just Do This seasonal sponsor summaries for this episode. This is something we're introducing in terms of whenever we have a seasonal sponsor, is to have that spot for them available. Let's do some key takeaways from this episode. I'm recording this at the end of November in the same year, but it was recorded in, I think, January, maybe February. And honestly, life was pretty grim right then. I'll just be completely honest with you, and that I wasn't really doing a lot of income, and we were having more debts than we had income at the time, and just had invested in some things that didn't work out as far as time went, and had some challenges in that regard. And so what ended up happening for me was a humbling of myself, of course, and we had to sell our house. But in that whole vein of what does this make possible, what that made possible for me was to now be in a position where I am out of debt and a new home that's actually bigger than my old home was, just in a different location. I am able to have the freedom to do all of these things. I'm coaching, creating, I'm writing. Life is really good. And so what this all made possible was for me to fully embrace what I preach and actually live in those moments. And so I would encourage you to do so as well. So that is probably the biggest possible takeaway, is from my friend Dan Miller's way of saying, what does this make possible? So I'm getting choked up thinking about it. It has been all these months, but it's still hard. We all lost him, and it's been hard to deal with. I think the other things you can take away from this episode is that it's okay to have small wins. You don't have to have big wins. I hope you hear me on that. That no matter where you're at, you have experiences that are more than someone that's just starting out. You always have wins. You always have things you can share. You always have ways you can be a mentor to someone. We'll be talking about that very, very soon. So until further notice, celebrate everything. That is your key takeaway from Just Do This. If you would like to learn more about that and get a copy of that, I am temporarily offering some options for people to be able to have a copy of that on audio for a brief rental and that sort of thing. If you'd like to learn more, you can go to thrive-it.com/current survey. That'll have some questions for you that help us better understand where you're at and better be able to serve you in the future. But as a gift for your time with that, we have an opportunity for you to have a copy of this book in various forms, whether it be audiobook, whether it be naming your own price in the hardcover. It kind of depends on where you're at in the world, literally, as far as what option will kind of be best for you. But we're making those available to you just because we want to see you successful, and I want to see you successful. So that is offered to you. This is thrive-it.com/current survey. to take advantage of that, and I hope you will. And at the end of that, there's also going to be an opportunity if you are in IT leadership, and this is a new thing for you, especially if you've not really feel like you have been equipped to be in leadership, but you've been asked to be in that kind of role. I have something special for you as well. I'd like to have a conversation with you about it. And so there'll be an opportunity either on that forum exactly or soon after, where you can book a call with me to discuss more of that. Thanks again for being here, and we'll see you next time.